Hello, welcome, and thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Aaron Diaz, and you're listening to episode number 5 of Live the Good Life from the podcast studios of Aaron's Wine Chronicles corporate headquarters in Richland, Washington. Today, we're talking about cigars, and we'll even delve into pipes and pipe tobacco as well. You know, as far as I'm concerned, cigars and pipes are a big deal here at Aaron's Wine Chronicles, and it's hard for me to imagine living the good life without those two components in it. So today, my guest is the owner and proprietor of Cigar Savvy. It's here in Kennewick, Washington, and he has a lot to say about cigars, pipes, and tobacco. So let's welcome Mr. Daniel Martinez. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on today, Aaron.
Yeah. You know, why don't you take a little bit of time, get to know our audience, introduce yourself. We'd like to know a little bit more about you, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and visit us. So, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name's Daniel Martinez. I'm the sole proprietor for Cigar Savvy in Kennewick, Washington. If you guys haven't stopped by the shop, we are across the road from Costco, kitty corner of Louisiana and Gage Street. But we are a true tobacconist shop. So we provide an experience when it comes down to premium cigars and premium pipe tobacco. We service the Tri-Cities area for the last 5 years, and we absolutely love everything there is to do with cigars and pipe tobacco. Nice.
Well, it's good to have you. I appreciate you coming out, and one of the things that I really think, and we'll get into this, is you have added a new dimension to the Tri-Cities with your store. We've been lacking, much like restaurants. We have your chain restaurants here in the Tri-Cities, we've got this and that. We don't really have, you go to Walla Walla, they've got so many better restaurants, higher quality, better diversity. We've got your Olive Garden, and we've got this and that, and Burger King and whatever.
Sure.
But we don't have anything that really stands out much
and it's
anymore.
Astonishing for the population side.
Yeah,
here.
It is. And so when you're starting to talk about, accessories to the good life, like cigars, pipes, and tobacco,
right,
you really have brought a new dimension to the Tri-Cities. So, in that vein, I'd like you to kind of tell us a little bit about your backstory. How did you get started as what I would consider a cigar aficionado and a tobacconist? I think that's how you say it,
sure,
tobacconist.
You got it right.
And a small business owner, because each one of those in and of itself takes, some balls and risk and courage and then also a lot of time,
sure,
because you're becoming an expert in something.
Absolutely. Different journeys on each one of those.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start with my cigar journey, my aficionado. The very first cigar that I smoked, I've been in this industry for about 2 decades now. So the very first cigar I smoked was a flavored cigar. It was the Java Wave. If you're not familiar with that cigar, it's an infused sweetened coffee chocolate cigar. It looks very similar to a Carpenter pencil, but that gave me the introduction to the premium cigar industry 20 years ago. But my background came into play. Before I opened the shop here in Tri-Cities, I ran a tobacco distribution company for 16 years. The company was well diversified in everything you could imagine, with tobacco SKUs from chew to cigarettes to premium cigars, hookah, vape, all of that aspect of it. One of the largest tobacco distributors in the Northwest, about $30 million in sales. And that I started from the base bottom there, moved myself up throughout every department within the company. In the last 6 years, I ended up running the company for them. So that really opened my eyes not only to the industry, but also gave me the opportunity to become the purchaser for the premium cigar categories for that company as well. So that opened doors for me in many ways that allowed me to not only continue my passion for premium cigars, but also the better understanding of cigars. It allowed me to go down to Nicaragua, do a couple factory tours.
Oh, you've done that?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
It is an amazing journey. We're going to eventually take a group of people down. So, Aaron, you're going to be on the list for that.
That'd be great. Man, that would just be awesome. So, how often do you smoke a cigar? Is it daily or?
Yeah, I definitely smoke a cigar daily in that manner. On warmer nights or warmer days in that manner, I'm pushing 2 to 3. Mm-hmm. Wow. The winter months, I'm about 1 cigar in the morning or midday or even the evening, but it definitely...
In the morning. Yeah.
A cigar with coffee?
I know, but I haven't been able to do it. My brother neither. We just can't, we haven't had the gumption to try it yet.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience. To be honest, you're smoking first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
You have to have the right cigar for it. Don't
Right.
get me wrong, but it's really enjoyable.
Well, you talked about, the first cigar that you started with when you were getting into it. To me, it reminds me of almost like wine with me, because you don't really start with the big, bold red wines, right? You start with the sweet wines and the dessert wines and the ports or whatever that are nice and sweet and whatever. And then you work your way to the big boys. And, and with the cigars on my side, same thing. I went with the really light Connecticut wrapper, very mild, not bitter, not a lot of spice, and even the flavored, the honey Tatianas,
Right.
of course, all of those.
Absolutely.
That's kind of where we all started. And so it's kind of, everybody has kind of the same, well, most people have the same
You're
path.
absolutely right. That's kind of the journey where everybody normally starts. It's either really mild, really sweet, and then they gradually get into the diversity that the premium cigar culture has to offer.
So, as we were talking about before we started recording, I first came in contact with you when you were up north of the Tri-Cities in the Yakima Valley and Yakima on the reservation, and you had a smoke shack up there, and my brothers met you, and they were always talking about you before I actually met you. But now all of a sudden we found out a few years back that you came to the Tri-Cities. How did you end up setting up shop in the Tri-Cities and leaving, the Yakima area?
Well, you kind of mentioned it right when we first started here. The lack of cigar culture out here was the big factor here. So not only within the distribution side, we provided a lot of retailers with tobacco products, including some of the retailers here in Tri-Cities, and there was a small amount of premium cigars coming into the area, but it was consistent. So me and my wife would always travel down here to do shopping and just hang out here, and started to realize, like, hey, where are the cigar shops out here? I visited the ones we supply. There has to be another cigar shop that's either direct buying from the manufacturer or not buying from us. And lo and behold, there wasn't. So it was kind of odd to see the population size of this area, Tri-Cities area, and not have a true tobacconist shop or a shop that's just a little step above than what's being offered in an area. And that was kind of our first look at this area when it came down to it. It wasn't our only option. Don't get me wrong, but Tri-Cities really stood out for us when we were thinking about it.
Yeah, I really like what you're offering. I mean, you have what I consider the premier place to go. There are a couple of other places that are available, but they just don't. They're in a different league.
Sure.
They're in a lower league than where you guys are right now doing your stuff out at Cigar Savvy.
That's very common in our industry with retail shops. If you travel around and you stop by different cigar shops, you have shops that are do really, really well, that are up to par with the industry and latest and greatest. And then you have the other shops that are just mom and pop shops, retirees, something just to help them continue their smoking habits or smoking experiences.
Or even at some of these cigar or cigarette places where you'll have a small little section. Sometimes they'll have a little walk-in humidor, small, much smaller than yours. And it's like, okay, you're cramped in there. It's like 4 foot by 4 foot.
Yeah. You're not getting the true experience by any means.
So, I know it's been a few years now since you've actually started shop. How many years ago was it you started?
We just turned our 5th year.
I was going to say 4 or 5.
Yeah,
right.
5 years
perfect.
now.
So now that you've been in the business for about 5 years, how is it going, and what has surprised you most about owning and operating your own cigar shop?
We've been truly blessed in the manner of continuous growth since we've opened. We have not slowed down. The cigar culture that we've kind of harnessed here is continuing to grow. It's continuing to evolve, and we are blessed to be able to evolve with that as well. The biggest or the most astonishing thing to me opening up this shop was the support, the local support that came out for small businesses. A quick example was once COVID hit, we were all kind of trying to figure out what was happening with all these shutdowns that were coming into play. And me being a small business, just with the rest of the small business, we didn't know what was going to happen. How are we going to survive with our doors being closed in that manner? And so, once the lockdown came into play, we told our base, we have communication with our base and saying, hey, we're going to shut down. We don't know for how long.
Yeah.
We're going to be,
that was a scary time.
It was astonishing.
This is your main livelihood, right?
This is it. Okay. This is it. Exactly.
Okay.
So, we mentioned it to everybody. We spread the word out saying, hey, come pick up your inventory, the cigars, stock up in that manner. And The 2 days before the lockdown, we did a month's worth of sales in 2 days.
Oh, people were like,
People
okay, we got to
came out,
stock up.
and everybody that came through the door was saying, "You know what? We appreciate what you do for this area. We want to see you come back after this is over." And just stocked up and really helped us go through it. It was so humbling. It's such a humbling experience to have the community come together to support the cause and make sure that we're going to be there to reopen down there. So that was one of the biggest things that was unexpected, was just the local support that came out.
Yeah.
And for Cigar Savvy, we absolutely love everybody.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, you're operating this thing. You got years of experience behind you, and then the 5 years here at the shop. What's been the most challenging part of running this business here in the Tri-Cities? And do you have? I mean, because I know a number of small business owners. They're not cigar folks; they're coffee folks, or they're running other small shops or whatever, and they tend to they tend to have issues with turnover rate of employees, even especially wine tasting rooms. You'll go into a wine tasting room, 1 year, and then you go back, 6 months later or a year later, and you've got a completely new staff teaching you about their wines. And so it's got to be something you had to deal with at some point.
Yeah, we've been blessed in that manner as well, where we haven't had the tremendous turnover that other colleagues in our industry that I've talked to have experienced. We're still small enough where we can maintain the tobacco experience with a small amount of employees in that aspect. And then also I have to commend all the guys that work for me, to be honest. Most of them have been there for 2+ years. Solomon, my right-hand man's been there for the longest since I've opened.
Mm-hmm.
So that aspect has not been there yet. I know with our growth and our continued expansion or future plans, I think that is definitely something that's going to come into play for us, is just finding the right people that are going to want to stay around and provide the experience that we've been providing. But we've been truly blessed in that manner, because I've talked to several colleagues, and that is a struggle. They've not been able to open doors certain days because they just don't have the staff for it.
Or they're training people up, and all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. And
that's
now
a huge expense.
You got to scramble. Yeah,
that's a huge expense. Yeah. That's one of the bigger concerns of for the shop, as well as getting people trained to a point where they are helping or supporting the shop in a manner, and that costs money to get somebody up and going into that aspect. Yeah. So if you get them up and then they're out a month or 2 months later, you're out the money for training in that aspect. That's crazy. That's a big factor for everybody.
So, in terms of specifics, what do you offer in context of tobacco-based products and accessories, both from a cigar standpoint, pipes, and maybe there's other forms of killing yourself that you can talk about.
Absolutely.
So I mean, and are there specific lines or manufacturers that you gravitate towards? Now, the cigar thing, we can talk about that separately. But for the pipes and pipe tobaccos and stuff, I imagine for each category of thing, you have specific lines that you want to tap into to sell their products, right?
Sure, absolutely. The biggest factor when it comes down to the lines of the cigars that we carry, that is a hard avenue for us to navigate, because there's so many different
There's a million of them, right?
Out there. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's new and upcoming cigar manufacturers and cigar brands that are coming into play. So that's an obstacle that we deal with on a daily basis, and on what cigars that we're going to bring in, and then also the space that we have to be able to display it. I'd love to have a huge warehouse that we just had every option available. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter, we have a 145 square foot walk-in humidor, and it's full. Yeah. So if we're going to bring in a new brand or the latest and greatest that a well-known manufacturer is bringing, we have to figure out what we're going to close up to put that space or open up space in the humidor for that aspect as well. Brands that I gravitate to, I try to dabble between boutique side of the cigar industry, which is smaller manufacturers, smaller names, because that is a trending a trend that is happening within our industry. The more knowledge that consumers are getting in regards to the cigar side of it, they start gravitating to some of the boutique styles and like the blenders that are in that aspect, versus brand recognition cigars like My Father and Cohiba and Oliva and those manners. You want to have a good mix, or at least for our shop, I want to have a good mix of both of those options when it comes down to the brands I gravitate to. And then I forget what was the last question you had asked me between the brands as well.
Well, just the lines of the different manufacturers for maybe pipe tobaccos and
Yes.
pipes and other things, other accessories that you sell.
Sure. So we are a true tobacconist. We cater to the premium cigar side of the industry and then also the pipe tobacco side of the industry. So all of the accessories that come along with it, from your humidor desktop to your standalone cabinet humidor for the premium cigars, cigar cutters, accessories,
Lighters,
humidification,
yeah.
lighters, everything you can imagine. On the pipe side of things, there's also brands out there that are very prominent within the pipe community. Cornell and Deal provides a tremendous amount of pipe tobacco. Sutliff, Savinelli, Peterson, Nordines, Chacombe are all big brands within the pipe community in there. And that avenue as well is such a big growing category for us. When we first opened our doors, we had, 3 tins of pipe tobacco and a couple pipes because Washington State has a 95% excise tax on pipe tobacco. So I'm like,
Worse than gasoline.
It's ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. One of the highest tobacco taxes in the U.S. and it's on pipe tobacco. But to be honest, that category, the other factor that plays into here is pipe smokers are not allowed to import or ship tobacco product or pipe tobacco into the state as well. So they're stuck paying the 95% excise tax. So that category is continuing to grow. We have over 60 different blends of pipe tobacco to choose from. We have 60 different pipes to choose from, different brands. So that category alone is growing substantially, and it's taking more and more space in our shop as well. So it's exciting. It's a whole other avenue and whole other rabbit hole you can go down.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in my head as you're talking, I'm like, man, it's cheaper to buy weed now than it is pipe tobacco. Did you ever think like 15, 20 years ago, whatever, it would ever be that way? I mean, no, you would never.
Absolutely not.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So, I've been out to your place quite a number of times, and it's only right down the road from where I live. And I know that you have this shaded outdoor seating area where people can sit out, relax, and enjoy a cigar after work or smoke their pipe outside, just outside the store. I really like that. That's a really nice touch. Can you tell us about how that came about, and if you have any periodic events that you typically plan out of Cigar Savvy or that you have on the horizon?
Sure, absolutely. That deck, the smoking deck, as we call it out there, was actually a suggestion from my wife when we were looking at buildings coming out this direction. I know I wanted to have an area that could potentially have a place to smoke cigars because, once again, Washington's not the most friendly place to smoke anything in that manner, cigars included. So when we put the smoking deck out, I was actually very hesitant to suggest that to the landlord. I was like, who's really going to want to sit on the side of the building, look at this other building, or look at the road and smoke a cigar? And to my astonishment as well, that deck gets a lot of use.
Every time I drive by, there's people out there.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's 0 degrees or 112 out. There's somebody out there, either huddled around a fire pit or underneath the sun umbrella, smoking a cigar. And then, on the nicer days, the deck's packed. So we get, 9 people out there. People come meet up with each other to kind of hang out and catch up on the smoking deck. So it's something I wish we had more room to expand from there as well. But it's a great a little addition to the shop as well. We also have that little parking area right next to the smoking deck, which we also utilize doing our cigar events.
Now, is that in the back?
No, it's actually right next to the deck.
Okay.
Yep, right in front of the smoking deck. We
that's right. That's right. Yeah, now that I think about it, I know that there's the front area there, but then there is a side area right next to the deck. And then don't you even have parking in the back?
Yes, we have a tremendous amount of parking in the back, and then we have both entries for front and back, which is great for our events. But yes, we do cigar events once a month. These are manufacturer-supported events. We're direct with all the manufacturers. And these events bring in a big crowd because, once again, the manufacturer comes in and educates people on their cigars and offers phenomenal deals and great promotional swag that comes along with it. And when those events happen, we do pop up an 18 by 30 tent out there, throw some tables, about 50 chairs out, and we normally get that smoking tent rocking. It's a great time just to come out and hang out and smoke cigars. The reps are always sitting out there just lounging, smoking cigars. And luckily, we're getting to a size where we're actually able to bring in some cigar celebrities. This last year was our first year that we were able to bring in Willie Herrera, the master blender for Drew Estate.
Oh, wow.
He's, this Drew Estate's the second largest tobacco
They got so many different cigars that they put out.
Phenomenal.
And different types of lines of cigars, from the flavor infused ones. I mean, and just lots of them. I mean.
Yeah, they are a well-diversified company, and by far, I think this year they got nominated for the best cigar company out there. And it's it's a great experience because they have a lot of direct communication with with the consumer,
Yeah.
and they do a phenomenal job advertising their product. So it makes it real easy for us to, hey, just bring this in because the customer already knows about it.
Yeah.
But yes, the smoking area is always popping up there. We have some fire pits we put out in the winter months. But if you guys have not attended one of our cigar events, I highly recommend it. We have at least 2 a month. If you guys aren't familiar with it, you jump on our social media page, jump on my website, add your email address, and you'll start getting notifications for those events. It's a great time.
Well, I already do. I'm on your list, but half the time sometimes I pop in and you're right in the middle of filming. I did that one time. I felt terrible. You were in the middle of filming a promo for one of your events, and I wasn't paying attention. I was like, oh, I got to get these cigars. I walk in and I kind of walked. I don't know if I walked right in between you, and then I looked over my shoulder and I was like, I felt like that tall. I was like, oh man. And you were like, no, don't worry about it. We're going. We're still going.
Absolutely.
And I was like, what an idiot.
No, and it happens more often than you think, to be honest.
Because you were kind of right in near the front.
Sure,
when you opened the door, you were right there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
Our shop's not that big, so we have very limited space to shoot these kind of things. And
I just felt bad. I'm using this platform right now to formally apologize.
no need for that.
You
at
probably remember that too. I was like,
Oh no, I think it just adds to the funniness of what we're doing, and it just gets more likes, more social media attention, which is fantastic.
Well, I just take a quick break to mention that we're both enjoying a libation as we record this podcast, and it's part of what we do at Live the Good Life. So, what are you drinking?
This is the Glenmorangie 18-year extremely rare that you supplied.
Yeah, single malt.
Single malt.
Oh
My goodness, the sweetness and the smoothness of this. I am a Glenmorangie fan, don't get me wrong, but this by far is one of the best ones I've had so far. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm doing the 21-year aged Bushmills Scotch. It's a beautiful Scotch, and it just tastes so smooth. I just love it. Okay, so in your view, then, now you kind of built us up about Cigar Savvy. You've told us all about what you carry and what it's like. So what's special about it? I mean, why is this the go-to place for cigars and pipes?
The answer is really simple, to be honest. We are providing a true tobacconist experience. There's several facets to that experience. The first one is going to be our customer service. We're very old-fashioned when it comes to customer service. When you walk through the door, expect a handshake, expect us to ask your name. And then on your return visit, expect us to remember your name and remember what you smoked, remember the conversations we had. That's one of the bigger factors that I wanted to ensure that are instilled in Cigar Savvy. And the crew has been phenomenal on being able to sustain that, as well as just remembering our clientele. And don't get me wrong, it's getting harder and harder because our clientele
the bigger it gets, the harder.
Growing. And to be honest, it's more prevalent to me now that I'm not front and center with the guys as much as I'll come out and I'm like, goodness, I don't remember this person's name. I remember the face, and because it's not a repetitive thing, and you lose it if you don't do it. So that's one of the first facets when it comes down to the go-to. Providing the experience not only when you walk through the door, but throughout your whole experience. When you walk into the humidor, whether you're a seasoned cigar smoker, or a seasoned pipe smoker, or it's your first time, or you're just an occasional cigar smoker, we're going to cater that experience around that fact there. So if you're coming in as a seasoned cigar smoker and you have your go-tos, we want to make sure you know that, hey, just like any other industry, there's an evolution of it. There's new cigars that come in every single month. There's new brands. There's new things that we're trying, and we want to make sure you're aware of it. If you're open to trying it, I always recommend don't get stuck with the same cigar. There's too many phenomenal cigars out there to get there. Find 20 of them that you just absolutely love. When you get to that point, you've experienced a lot, and make sure you have a little section for the newest and latest and greatest. But
I mean, the analogy is just like wine. When you
Very
think about,
similar.
Especially in this area where we have tons of wine tasting rooms and vineyards and all of that, there's so many to choose from, and you don't want to get stuck in any just one wine because
it's really easy to do.
The diversity is there, and cigars are just like that. I mean, it's
right.
It's really neat. So now, if we take a step with a little bit more specificity, I want to ask you, what are some of your favorite cigars and why?
Man, that's a hard question.
I know.
That is one of the hardest questions and the most common question I get personally when people come to the shop. Of course, I have my favorites, right? There's some phenomenal ones. I have a hard time not gravitating to the Oliva V series, the original blend. I've smoked that my entire smoking experience, and it's one of those cigars that I know it's going to be consistent. I know exactly what it's going to give me, and I know when I'm going to enjoy it. So it's really easy to grab. But I'm more gravitate to the Maduro side of cigars.
Yeah.
Fuller bodies, there's more flavors that come of it. There's a little more flavor characteristics, passion, but brand wise, I'm all over the board, right? There's manufacturers that make phenomenal full body blends, and I'm on board to try them and figure out, okay, is that a blend I enjoy? Is that going to be added to my rotation? So that's always a plus. But once you get into that aspect as well, it's really easy to get stuck there. Is another factor. So I try to expand within the humidor, so mild, sweet.
Yep.
Experience that. There's certain ones that I try every year that I don't like, but I'm going to try it again the following year just because I want to be able to continue to talk about those cigars when they come in or when we have events. So it's making sure your palate is still understanding all of the options that we have to offer at the shop.
I mean, it depends on your mood, right? And
Absolutely.
It depends on sometimes maybe what you're feeling as far as your palate. What have you eaten or recently, or what are you drinking? Because pairing with a cigar is also something that we'll probably talk about here in just a little bit.
Sure.
And it's something that my brother and I take very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. You should.
And not necessarily food so much, but you have just educated me that, hey, with breakfast, you can have a cigar. So obviously, maybe coffee or food is something that you can actually pair with a cigar. And I would be learning everything from the start on that one. But there's just so much when it comes to cigars and the flavors and the aromas. Again, the analogy is to coffee and wine and even scotches and bourbons. Once you dive deeper and deeper and deeper into one of those things, you'll find that there's a lot of similarities. And that your body is really a measurement stick.
Right.
Your smell, your sense of smell, your sense of taste, all of those things, right? I mean, it's just, it's that's what it is.
Right.
So if you think about a beginning cigar smoker, you're the expert, you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi of cigars in the Tri-Cities.
But I appreciate the compliment there.
How do you get a beginner to kind of ease into the world of cigars? I mean, what would your recommendations be to somebody who's just getting started?
We're going to approach that the same way we approach people walking through the door. If you walk through my door and you're a first-time cigar smoker, you let me know. I'm going to identify how experienced are you. Have you never smoked a cigar before? Did you smoke one? What was your experience? Where are you going to smoke this cigar? Are you going to smoke it by yourself? Is it a party? Is it camping? Identify what kind of environment you're going to be around. How long do you want to smoke for? Then we're going to dive into, hey, do you want to jump into something more on the classic side of tobacco flavors? Are you more keen to have something a little bit sweeter, a little bit more mellower? Once we identify those factors, then I'll start recommending certain cigars for that experience. Because the end result is I want that person to smoke that cigar and be like, man, that's a great stick. Like, I can see why everybody enjoys this. The last thing I want to do is give them a LFD double Lajero powerhouse that's going to turn him green and knock him on his ass. It's just not going to happen. So I would approach it that way. I'd recommend something more on the mild, maybe a Dominican Connecticut shade wrapper, very similar to what you said, how you started, or even a sweetened cigar, real mellow, give him a nice gradual introduction, and then guide him in his journey when he comes back and say, hey, how did you enjoy that? Are you ready to try something different, completely different? And add one of those into the rotation, and they gradually change over time and start enjoying all the selections that we have to offer.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I made some mistakes when I brought on both younger and beginning cigar smokers here to my house. We'd have a party or something, or we would have a barbecue and eat, high-end steaks and just fill up like King Henry VIII.
Oh, yeah.
Then we'd go sit out by the fire and we lit up. And one time my compadre, I don't want to name him because he'll be very upset that I've shared this to the masses who are listening to this podcast, right? All three people, my mom, my brother, no. But, Juan Valencia, he was, we had just had a great dinner. We go out and I thought that he had smoked cigars before. I think maybe he even alluded to the fact that he had, and so it was no big deal or whatever. I can't really remember. It's a long time ago. So we broke out some cigars and I gave him kind of a medium-bodied smoke, whatever. We smoked it all the way down. Both of us had a little drink afterwards and, but during, midway through the cigar, he's changing the colors.
Oh, yeah.
And he had to get up, and poor guy, I felt bad for him. He went up, and the great dinner that we had ended up on my lawn, about 15 feet away.
That's too bad. Absolutely.
And so I hear you. I hear what your message is. You got to break people in gradually. Granted, he said he could hang with the big boys,
Sure,
and we thought he
sure.
could,
Yeah, if
but
you're gonna talk the talk,
whatever.
get ready
That's
for
right.
that.
You can't take the heat, Juan. You got to, get out of the kitchen.
You only do that once, and then
He knows I love him.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
This
absolutely.
is a shout out to him. So, next question for you is, we're talking about cigars. Cigars are made of tobacco and leaves. Pipe smoking. You've got this tobacco that you're stuffing in the bowl and you're smoking it.
Right.
What's the difference? What are the differences between cigar tobacco and pipe tobacco? Can you help us understand that? Because
sure.
when I was putting together the questions that we were going to talk about, I myself, I have a pipe and I have some pipe tobacco from you that I bought last year or whatever. And I'm looking at it and I'm looking at, if I was to break open a cigar, they don't look much different. The leaf obviously does, but
Sure. There's a big difference.
But I know there is because I Googled it and I'm like, I got to ask you this question.
Yep.
So
No, there's a huge difference when it comes down to the premium cigar side and the pipe tobacco. So, the variety of tobacco is going to be a big factor too.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain varietals of tobacco that's grown for the pipe side of, which is a lot of Kentucky Burleys. The leaves are a lot smaller in that manner as well. The stalks don't grow as big versus the premium cigar side of it. They grow huge tobacco plants, and they're looking for these huge, gorgeous leaves that come out of it as well. So that's one factor. The varietal tobacco is definitely different when it comes down to what varietal tobacco is being used, and also where the tobacco is coming from, what origin of country the tobacco is coming from is another big factor that plays between both. But then you jump into the fermentation process of it. A lot of the pipe tobacco that's out there goes through a fermentation process, but then it also goes through a casing process, which is, they add different flavorings and molasses and things of that's going to give you the sweeteners and bring out the sugars of the tobacco, but also give you an aromatic aroma that comes through with that as well. On the opposite side, on another category for pipe tobacco, you have three categories, right? You have the aromatic, which is nice, sweet, mellow, aromatic tobacco. You have non-English, which is just strictly tobacco, which is Burley's, Kentucky's. So you're getting a lot of the tobacco flavor that comes through there. And then you have the English blends, what they use some of the brighter, bolder tobaccos like the Periques, the Latakias, the smoked Kentucky fire-cured tobacco. Very bold, very bright. If you're not used to smoking tobacco or pipe tobacco, a lot of that tobacco will give you a tongue bite is what they call it, because it just overwhelms the palate. So it does take some time in there. The premium cigar side of it, the fermentation's completely different. It goes through different processes of fermentation, but that's where the flavoring comes out of it. So the tobacco that's chosen for that, it gets fermented in certain ways, in bourbon barrels and pilones and all sorts of different ways to render the sugars as well, but give you different flavor profiles that come out of that tobacco. So the fermentation, the origin of tobacco, the varietal of tobacco is completely different on both of those.
And what about the aging process after the fermentation?
The aging process is another factor that comes into play. A lot of the pipe tobacco doesn't sustain the same amount of age of tobacco as the premium cigar side. Right. The majority of your premium cigar tobacco is going to be aged for about 2 years, fermentation in aging rooms as well. Versus the casing of the fermentation on the pipe tobacco is roughly around a year, so they're able to sustain that side a lot faster or duplicate the pipe tobacco blends a lot faster than you would premium cigars.
And that 2 year aging process is very similar to what the aging process in barrels is for wine. I mean,
it's
here we go back to the analogy again.
You keep on bringing that up. I'll mention something really quick. My in-laws had a winery over in Maine.
Oh wow!
And it was more of the sweeter dessert wines is what they've catered to. But I would go over there and just look at all those operas. This is after I've gone down to Nicaragua and saw the factories and saw how. And I just kept on saying, man, there's so many similarities to the tobacco industry and what you're doing, their fermentation, the labor of love that goes into it, the different flavors that you're pulling out of this by doing certain things to it. It's very, very similar. So it's I can see why they go hand in hand for sure.
So what new lines of cigars or pipe tobaccos are you most excited about?
Well, normally around this time, it's a slow time of year, but there's always cigars that are coming into the shop. So this within the next 2 weeks, we're going to have a cigar that comes out once a year. It's made for St. Patty's Day. You probably know it. It's the Alec Bradley Filthy Hooligan and the Shamrock. This is a limited production cigar. It looks very gimmicky. Don't get me wrong when you look at it, but the support that comes around the cigar is because it's actually a really well put together cigar. The flavors are great. It's a barber pulled Candela wrapper, which is a green wrapper, and a Maduro wrapper with the Filthy Hooligan. So it's very eye pleasing. It pops out of the box, and the Shamrock is a tricolored barber pole. So it has a Connecticut shade wrapper, a Maduro dark wrapper, and then a green Candela wrapper as well.
Really cool.
Those, they only produce about 2,000 boxes every holiday. We get our allocation in there, and we normally sell out before St. Patty's Day hits because it's such a all the consumers or all the regulars want to grab a few for their year, and
for those who don't know, Alec Bradley, of course, they have a tradition of putting out highly ranked, really delicious cigars. I mean, my brother, I used to smoke them a lot, so much so that I kind of got burned out a little bit on them, the Prasado and all those others. And my brother kind of got into them as well, and he really loves a number of them as well, and he's got some in his humidor. So Alec Bradley has they
have a huge portfolio,
a tradition in a portfolio.
Huge portfolio, absolutely. Yeah. On the pipe side, we do have a limited edition pipe blend that's coming in as well. It's called the Folklore. It's by Cornell and Deal. It's a unique blend that they've come into, and they highlight the evolution of the fermentation process and different techniques that they're utilizing in the pipe side of it to render some different flavor and characteristics that really bring out the flavor that they're looking for. So it's a 4 varietal blend of pipe tobacco, different fermentation techniques done on all 4 of those, different ages. I think there's some tobacco in there from 2016. So some really well aged tobacco in there as well. That's kind of the latest that's coming into the shop here in this week or so. But normally our industry, the pipe and premium cigar industry, all the new releases are normally about midsummers when you start seeing them, and then we just get pounded with all the new stuff that's coming out to play.
Wow. We've talked a little bit about different regions from which the tobacco comes from, but I didn't get from you, and I know this is a loaded question because, if somebody could ask me this question with regard to wine, and I would have a hard time answering it.
Sure.
But for cigar tobacco, what is your favorite region that grows the tobacco that you would rank number 1? And for pipe tobacco, what's your favorite region?
That is a tough question.
Yeah, it is.
There's
because it's almost can't really answer it, right?
Right. It is tough. I can kind of tell you where the industry lies as a whole, because there is trends in that every industry kind of follows in that manner. And the trending side for the premium cigar is Nicaragua. Nicaragua's tobacco and the volcanic soil that they utilize and the way they're facilitating the growth of all the tobacco plants out there, they're just producing very, very highly quality tobacco that comes out of there.
Love them.
So you're seeing a lot of the new blends that are coming out are really featuring the Nicaraguan tobacco, which that tobacco is known for the fuller flavor, the richness, a little bit of pepper spice that the volcanic soil produces out there. But the quality that comes out of there is by far, it rivals any other country out there. But I think that's kind of the leader for premium cigars. The pipe side, you don't really hear the regions very often in that manner. They more focus on the unique blends that are being created by the master blenders, saying, hey, and they kind of touch base on the distinguishing flavors that they've been able to render out of the blend they created. So you don't really hear much about it. I know some of the big factors, like the Parish Perique is one of those very sought after pipe tobacco blends that's very, very limited, and there's only few pipe blenders that are actually able to capture or grab some of the true Parish Perique. There are different tobaccos that have similarities, and they are called Perique, but it's not a true origin of Perique tobacco, and that's one of the things that are sought after in the pipe side. But yeah, Nicaragua is a big one. It's Honduras, Dominican,
Dominican,
Mexico, Cuban,
right?
Just all
some of the Mexican
African
cigars coming out. I mean, and then of course there's the myth of Cuba, right? I mean,
sure.
I mean, we could talk about that as a whole new podcast. Right. But I mean, everybody has this idea that if you're smoking a Cuban, it's the best in the world, and I don't buy it.
Yeah,
I don't buy it anymore. I mean, I don't know about in the '60s and '70s because I wasn't smoking at that time.
It's one of those taboo things, right? It's hard to acquire. If you get them, it's traveling abroad. And now the next hardest thing now, if you are going to try to enjoy a Cuban cigar, is get an authentic Cuban cigar.
Yeah, right. So many fakes.
The black market is just insane. They say about 80% of purchases for Cuban cigars are fake now.
Yeah.
80%. That's insane. So you're most likely, if you're not well versed on what you're looking for in a true Cuban, you're probably going to get tricked into buying something that's not a true Cuban tobacco cigar.
But there's always that myth too. It's just they're going off their historical prominence.
Right.
Just like Bordeaux wines in France.
Absolutely.
There's another analogy to the wine industry. Everybody thinks that, if it comes from a French, a well-established French, winery, it's got to be the top of the world. And they're selling for thousands of dollars a bottle.
Oh, goodness.
You know what, though?
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Yep. I believe it. I believe it.
So, another loaded question. The best cigar you've ever smoked?
Man, goodness. That's even harder to remember. I think it's going to come down to, I think there's two factors there, right? The cigar you're smoking has to be phenomenal, but also your surrounding experience. It really plays a big factor, I think, in how you're going to enjoy a cigar or making it a memorable experience when it comes down to it. I have several of those where, you're sitting around with your buddies or I'm at a trade show with the industry, sitting there talking to Arturo Fuente or Steve Saka, and they hand you a cigar.
You've talked to Arturo Fuente?
Oh, absolutely.
I am not worthy to be in this room with you.
Oh, goodness. No, it's don't get me wrong. I get starstruck as I get turned into this little fanboy and be like, oh my God, this is great. But
fanboy.
They hand you a cigar and they say, hey, cut and light that. And you're sitting there, the experience of a great cigar, but then also just your surrounding experience. It makes it a phenomenal, a memorable cigar, the best cigar you can imagine.
Man.
The other analogy there would be like the factory tours. When I went down and did Perdomo's Nicaragua factory, we're smoking cigars the entire time. Mm-hmm. Every one of those cigars, while you're sitting there looking at the fields and looking at the rolling rooms and the fermentation rooms, smoking cigars, you're like, golly, this is such a great stick. Like, it's so phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And you'll smoke those. I've smoked those cigars several times before that trip, and I don't remember that experience being so prominent. And
part of it was the ambiance of where you were, and
exactly.
And you're entrained in who you were around, and you're trying to just swallow the entire experience,
exactly.
right?
I think that plays
it's a human factor. It's a human factor.
Yes, absolutely.
One thing that we haven't talked about today is, the variety of cigars in terms of dimension, shape, ring gauge, size, all of those things. That's the way they're measured physically, but those metrics also affect the smoke experience. I know that recently, over the last few years, I have gravitated, as has my brother, to the larger ring gauge and maybe something that's 6 inches or longer, because we want to extend the smoke experience.
Right.
We don't smoke 3 or 4 cigars a day.
Right.
On occasion, we've done 2 together.
Yeah.
Like we'll meet up around lunchtime and have one, and then later on in the evening we're having drinks or something, and we're like, let's smoke another one, and we do, and that's rare, but we've done it. I don't know that we could do 3, but of course it just takes training,
Yeah,
I think I need to go through the U.S. Navy SEAL training course and that. But so in terms of the ring gauge, which is really the circumferential diameter and the length. The shape and the length of the total overall length of the cigar. What are your personal preferences, and what do you think the differences are between the smaller and the larger?
Sure, that's one of the issues that we deal with as a retailer as well. I'll mention that as well, is all of the sizes and shapes that are coming from the manufacturer, and not only that, each manufacturer has its unique name that we have to remember. The prequel or the a certain name that they give it and that name references a size, but it doesn't say the size.
Right.
So it could be a 6x60 double Toro, but they call it a name, and you're like, okay. So there is a big factor there. So when you're smoking cigars, depending on the size and shape, is going to give you the length of the experience of the cigar, but also how much of the wrapper you're getting, how much of the filler you're getting, and then how slow or fast that cigar is smoking.
Yep.
So those are plenty. You can put 3 cigar sizes side by side and smoke all 3 of them, and you'll get a different variation of flavor that comes off there because of the consistency and density of the cigar. Personally, I am a fast smoker when it comes down to cigars. So one of the big things that happens with the fast smoker, I struggle with smoking smaller ring gauge Coronas or Lanceros cigars. I really have to slow my smoke rate down, because if I smoke normally, I'll ruin the cigar. You'll get it too hot and burn out the flavor out of it. So a 6x60 can handle the heat that I put on it. It's a bigger ring gauge. The density is bigger. The filler can handle the heat. It stays lit a lot longer for myself. I'm a chatterbox.
So you said 6x60?
6x60.
Yeah,
60 ring gauge.
That's the thick. Yeah, I like those.
It's a little bit longer smoke, but it can handle the smoke rate that I normally puff rate at. So that's my preference when it comes down to it.
Cool. Yeah. I think I like the bigger cigars. You're right, though. There have been times when I've seen a review of a cigar, and I'm like, oh man, man. And then I look at what they were actually reviewing, and it was like a 4.5 or 5-inch smoke. I bought the larger version of that, add another 2.5 inches, and a bunch more on the ring gauge, and I smoked it. And I didn't get the same experience that I expected based on the rating, because you're right, it does affect
change
the flavor profile as well. So,
absolutely.
So in terms of pipes and pipe tobaccos, what offerings do you have at Cigar Savvy? Because there's different types of pipes, sizes of pipes, the Gandalf big, Lord of the Rings pipes or whatever. And, so, I mean, do you offer, different types of pipes? And obviously you mentioned something about the different tobaccos that you offer. But.
Absolutely. We have roughly about 50 different options of pipe tobacco blends, from English to non-English to your aromatic blends. So tons of options to jump into. When it comes down to pipes and accessories, of course, we carry different brands. Big brands like Savinelli and Peterson and Chacombe and Nording are some big brands that are known for their custom briar pipes that they come out there. Of course, when it comes down to selecting a pipe for yourself, there's tons of options. You mentioned the long Gandalf-looking pipe. Those are church wardens. Okay. Long stems. They have big bowls. It cools the smoke. The length of that stem actually cools the smoke before it gets to your mouth. So there's characteristics that come into play.
And you said big bowls, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a big trend that recently the bowls of pipes are getting bigger, because people want to put more pipe tobacco
and not repeatedly have to repack it.
Exactly right. So you're seeing that kind of trend right now, as bigger bowls are in style at the moment. We have more options for those. But if you're a pipe person and you want to come in, and the biggest thing about selecting a pipe is touching, feeling it, make sure how it feels in your hand, the look of it. So it's real hard to buy pipes online, because you're looking at a little picture, it's grainy, you don't know. So there's something we offer. We do pipe events, which we call them trunk shows, pipe trunk shows. We do them in the winter because the colder months are normally pipe season. Pipe smoking increases during the winter months. So we'll partner up with the manufacturer and do a consignment on 200 different pipes, and we'll bring them in for a couple of weeks. So you'll be able an opportunity to try and hold and see a whole from really high end $600 pipes down to your $90 pipes. So there's a ton of options and variety. It's a great time to come out. We have those at the tail end of the year normally when we do those as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about, and we mentioned this earlier, let's talk a little bit about pairing cigars with something. Now, let's talk about food and coffee first, because that's all new to me.
Sure.
I have not paired any cigar with food or coffee.
Right. So coffee is one of my favorite pairings. To be honest, a morning coffee, whether it's black or you have a latte.
I'm going to have to try this. I mean,
it's great. It's a warm, you're smoking a cigar. And normally when I'm smoking in the morning, it's normally a milder cigar. So the Magnum or Fuente Rosado is one of the ones I gravitate to normally.
Like the Rosado,
real mellow, real smooth, but it pairs fantastic with the black coffee or a latte. If I'm smoking something on the sweeter with coffee, I'll go a little bit bolder as well. I want the cigar to stand out a little bit. So the sweeter the coffee, I try to gravitate a little bit bolder in that flavor profile as well. Don't get me wrong. I've tried a little mini LFD double Ajero 4x54 in the morning, and it almost knocked me down. So I learned my lesson there. The nicotine content got me. It was too early in the morning for that. But pairing regards to other unique pairings out there, of course, everybody knows bourbons, and the wine industry is one of the newer ones that people are pairing different cigars with different wines and things of that sort. I haven't dabbled in. I'm not well versed on wine, so I haven't been able to experience much of that. But I know it's a topic that's brought up more and more often nowadays in regards to pairing wine and cigars. Another unique one that you hear in our industry a lot is a sarsaparilla. Sarsaparilla has a unique profile that brings out different flavors or renders different flavors when you're smoking a cigar. So you see a lot of people grab a root beer or a sarsaparilla that they'll pair it. So it's a unique, fun way to pair a cigar with. It sounds really odd, but it's something that our industry does. There's a few people that have mentioned it and talked about it. So I hear that topic come up a lot at the shop and be like, hey, have you ever tried with sarsaparilla? And we've actually started carrying some root beer and things of that sort for the guys that are really getting into it. I tried it. There is different flavors, but once again, you're changing. I don't know if it's the great pairing, but it is unique and something fun to try as well.
So on your deck, your smoke deck, you can't open up alcohol out there, can you?
No, unfortunately, we can't.
Yeah, because it would be drinking outdoors in the state of Washington.
Exactly. At some point, I'm hoping we can get a liquor license and close something down.
Well, just get the liquor license, not necessarily to sell liquor, but to allow the consumption of it
Right.
with a cigar, because I will tell you, if you've not paired a nice dessert wine with maybe 20% alcohol by volume that's kind of thick and viscous and nectary and just delicious, you could pour it over ice cream and it would be a great after-dinner dessert.
Yeah.
But you have that in a little cordial or a little small glass, and you're sipping that with a cigar, knock you out of your chair.
Yeah.
And even better, a port or a port-style wine. If you haven't done that, you're missing. I would have expected you, the guru, the Obi-Wan of cigars, to have had that pairing. We're going to have to do that. We're going to have to do it right here at Aaron's Wine Chronicles. You only work right down the road.
Oh, sure. I'd
After
love
work
to.
one time, come over. We'll smoke a cigar, light a fire. My brother Adam will come out. We'll share a port and a dessert wine and let you try both of those with a cigar, and you will just, it's a whole new world out there,
Oh, man,
Daniel.
I would love that. I'll bring the cigars for sure.
I'm telling you, I don't think you need to. My humidor's fully loaded
Your
too.
collection
But,
looks
yeah.
pretty vast there. I saw it.
So I guess if you didn't own and operate Cigar Savvy, what would you be doing?
Oh, man, that's another tough question there. You know, I've always excelled with any industry or business that I've jumped into. So I feel like I would probably gravitate to still owning a small business. I don't know if I would have been into this category. You know, I talked to the wife the other day. I was like, I can pinpoint my journey on where I turned into the tobacco industry. If I would have took a left there and took a different route, who knows where I'd be. But it took me down that path. I always say things happen for a reason. It just seems to, you know, things just always happen for us. It played out the way it needed to play out. So if I wasn't in this industry, I'd imagine I'd still be a small business owner of some sort. I would see that for the future.
Cool. So I guess as we kind of wrap this up, what's on the horizon when you look forward to your current situation over the next 3 to 5 years? What are you looking forward to most?
You know, the growth of the shop is one of the big factors that is always top of mind, right? We've since I've opened the shop, I've talked about it, and I probably started talking about it way too soon because it just hasn't happened yet. I want to get a few more shops open in the Tri-Cities area, and then I want to jump into a private cigar club lounge. Smoking indoors.
That is a great thing to say.
Absolutely. It's been in the works for a long time. We're actually ready to jump into something there, but we're just kind of waiting to see what first and second quarter is going to end up doing here and then make a decision if we're going to jump into it.
Right there is going to put you in a house up on the hill.
Oh, here. Man, I hope so. That's the end result.
I mean,
goal,
I swear, if you did something like that, I'd be a groupie. I'd be down there with a sleeping bag outside the door before you open it.
You know, it's one of those things that you just cannot, especially here in Washington. You get so many travelers that come through here, and they're like, "What do you mean we can't? You don't have any lounges? You can't smoke indoors anywhere?" Yeah, it's a tough one. So you know, if we 3 to 5 years, I'd like to see a lounge open to put us on the map as a destination point and not just a cigar shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we've covered a lot of ground, Daniel. It has been great hosting you today. You know, before we wrap this up officially, why don't you remind the audience about, you know, Cigar Savvy, you know, where it's located, hours, just all the stuff that's really important to people who need a go-to place for cigars and pipes.
Sure, absolutely. Once again, my name's Daniel. I own Cigar Savvy in Kennewick. We are right across the street from Costco at 8390 West Gage Boulevard, Suite 110. If you ever gone to Uncle Sam's, we're kitty corner of that spot. We're open Tuesday through Sunday from 9 to 6 would be Tuesday through Saturday, and then Sunday 10 to 4. Stop in the shop. If you ever experience cigars or you want to have a different outlook on cigars or pipe tobacco, or you just want to jump into it or you're a seasoned smoker, stop in and experience what we have to offer. A true tobacconist shop is what we want to do. Follow us on our social media pages, Facebook. You can jump on our website, add your email list to our email list there. You'll start getting notifications for our events, any kind of promotions, and just stay in the loop of what the industry has to offer. We have bigger and better events coming up this year as well, so I really look forward to seeing you, Aaron, there, and anybody else that'd love to join us. But once again, I truly appreciate the time and inviting us here to live the lifestyle for sure. We are a big factor. We're a culture and luxury culture at that, so we absolutely love it. And thank you again.
All right, Daniel. Thank you for joining us on Live the Good Life. And that's all we have for today's episode. Again, for more of Living the Good Life, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Aaron's Wine Chronicles, or you can go online at aaronswinechronicles.com. And for the video podcast version of this episode, visit my YouTube channel at the @ Aaron's Wine Chronicles 6666. So for our next episode, I'm going to be interviewing April Redout. April is the owner of Redout Wine Consulting and an expert wine educator and management consultant in the Northwest wine industry. April was actually the inspiration for this podcast, and we'll have lots to talk about on our next episode, so stay tuned for that. So again, I want to thank you all for listening, and remember, wherever you go, whenever you can, always live the good life. Until next time.